Hello and welcome again to another episode of How to Avoid Murder and Other Awkward Situations. I am your host Dave, and with me always is the lovely Laura. And tonight, we're going to discuss something gruesome and something horrible. We may laugh, we may make some jokes, we use gallows humor here. It's not for the faint of heart, you may be offended. And if you're a delicate boy that plays the drums in an alt-rock band from Chicago, you will be offended. And you probably should listen to something else, something that decent folks listen to. I wouldn't know, because I'm not listening to it. And so, without further ado, let's proceed. We are going to explore a horrible crime that took place in a horrible suburb of Chicago, Palatine, in 1993. Tonight, the Brown's Chicken Massacre. Now,
nice. Brown's Chicken and Pasta.
Brown's Chicken and Pasta. In our research for the show, we pulled the menu for Brown's Chicken and Pasta, and it seems like that place is a death factory in general. It sells Italian beef, massacre, fried chicken.
In true Chicago style. It's
really
just a heart attack on a plate.
I think if you spend $40, they throw a hot dog at you as you walk out the door.
Fried chicken, they specialize in fried chicken, fried mushrooms. They also have pasta, and they also have Italian beef.
Hey, I'm frying chicken here.
No stone.
Put some mushrooms in.
No stone unturned. I love them.
Yeah. We were just in Chicago recently. It was a good little trip.
We were.
And
tell what landmarks we drove past.
Saw the John Wayne Gacy murder site and the H.H. Holmes Murder House Foundation. They were both torn down.
Pretty cool. Pretty spooky.
Yeah, kids loved it. We are good parents. But this is a fairly old crime, but it kind of touches a lot of people in a large suburban and metro area because it was unsolved for so long. Back in the winter of 1993, the police responded to several phone calls from acquaintances and family members of workers at the Brown's Chicken in Palatine, Illinois. They arrived there late in the night, early in the morning, 4 to 5 in the morning. All the cars were in the parking lot. They went in, and what they found was a horrific scene that went unsolved for almost 9 years. 7 people were dead. All were shot in the head. One had her throat cut. The bodies were in 2 different refrigeration units. 5 were in a walk-in cooler, a walk-in freezer, and 2 were in a cooler, a walk-in cooler. I guess the differentiation, one was frozen, one was a fridge.
Oh, I didn't. They were in the freezer?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the, it was a clean crime scene mostly. I mean, there was not a lot of blood left. It appeared that somebody had mopped it up. There were no shell casings. There were no fingerprints. The only piece of evidence that was really unique was there was a lone piece of half-eaten chicken in a garbage can. And
who the fuck eats chicken before they murder people?
Bastards, Laura.
A psycho.
Bastards do. And we're going to get into these. And really, what we're going to try and figure out tonight is who was the psycho. This wasn't a one-person job. 2 people were here. And at first it appeared the motive was robbery because the safe was cleaned out. But in reality, this was not a robbery. This was a thrill killing. And the 2 people that went to Brown's Chicken that night had every intention of murdering everybody in there, or at least one of them did. And they ended up dead. In fact, the 2 people that went there were high school friends. One's name was Juan Luna. He was a good, hard-working Latino gentleman who had previously worked at that Brown's Chicken. However, he had not worked for the owners of Brown's Chicken, the current owners. It had been purchased since he worked there, so he wasn't recognized by the staff when he came in.
So they didn't know him.
Yeah. And then...
How old were they? Ish.
I believe they were...
Like early 20s.
Yeah, they were late teens, early 20s when they went there.
So they were recently friends in high school.
Yeah, I think they were 19 or 20 when this happened. And the person I think was the ringleader, the true bad seed, his name was James Degorski. Now, James Degorski was born outside of Illinois, but because his last name was Degorski, he was ordered to move to Illinois immediately. Because they said, you fucker, you need to go to Chicago.
Oh, yeah, that's a Chicago name. Degorski.
Degorski.
The Bears.
So really nobody thought there was anything odd about these two gentlemen going to Brown's Chicken at 9 o'clock on this cold night. This was on January 8th, 1993. Now, what happened was... we'll call him Jim, because James is a little bit too formal. I think after you kill 7 people, you can go by Jim instead of James.
Well, wait. But Jim's kind of friendly sounding.
That's true. All right.
I think he's, you know what? He's the kind of guy who would have just wanted to go by his formal name.
James.
He would have thought Jim didn't command enough respect.
Yeah, so let me tell you about James and Juan. Now, full disclosure, the movie Napoleon Dynamite was loosely based on these two. Very similar dynamic.
Different ending.
Different ending, whole different vibe. That's a whole other podcast. I mean, it started off as a true crime film and kind of evolved into something else that was pleasant, unlike this. Juan and James were friends. They had a little crew together, and they were kind of known as the burnouts. They enjoyed marijuana, LSD, but they lived in a nice suburban. They were nice suburban
Sounds
kids.
Like a lot of people we knew in high school.
A lot of people.
And yeah, I mean, this was like around. I mean, this was a little before we were in high school. This was before I was in high school.
It was 1993. You were a freshman in high school, I believe.
Probably.
Maybe, allegedly.
I think I was in 8th grade.
You're definitely making out with high school kids at this point, though. Whatever,
probably.
yeah.
No.
So so, anywho, so Juan was just your normal high school kid, a hard worker. He worked at this fast food place, and he was buddy with James, and they had their assorted girlfriends and friends and well-wishers and whatnot. But James Degorski was the bad seed. Much like most serial killers, he came from an abusive home. He was one of 5 kids, and his dad was an alcoholic who was both psychologically abusive, and his mother was as well, too. He didn't suffer sexual abuse, but he suffered a lot of physical abuse, humiliation, and they grew up in more or less, poverty. And he was a known animal torturer. He would brag about blowing up cats, setting them on fire, strangling them. He actually sought out cats in particular to kill and murder, and this is known amongst his peer group.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the kind of thing. I mean,
it gets worse.
Oh God.
So again, I want to point out when this murder happened, only one of these 2 people had a record, and James had the record. When he was 16 years old, he was dating a high school girl who he savagely beat in a car, kind of held her captive, and then when she tried to escape the vehicle, after he basically tried to rape her, he held her down and slammed the car door on her legs, preventing her from running away. She did manage to get away, though. Oh, my God. And he was put in the juvenile justice system. He was also arrested for burglarizing a home after that.
It sounds like he could have been buddies with Todd Kohlhepp.
He could have been. And like Todd Kohlhepp, this guy pretty much got away with it. And we're going to get into that. Now,
so he went to a juvenile facility.
No,
he didn't?
There's no record of him being in a juvenile facility.
Oh, my God.
It was, he got charged with domestic violence or battery.
But wait, he was how old? 16?
He was 15 when that happened. 15 to 16. The age is, it's a little bit unknown because it's a sealed record.
Think back to when you're 15 and, like, the other 15-year-old boys that you knew. I mean, can you really, it's hard to imagine the scrawny 15-year-olds that I knew beating up their girl. Well...
Yeah, and meanwhile,
I can imagine some of them being that horrible.
Well, what's crazy, this guy's getting laid left, right, in high school, which, again, it's a point of contention. Because I feel like, why are these serial killers getting much more action than I did in high school? Clearly women go for the bad boys. And this is really about the whole reason this is
Ladies,
we're here.
Do not go for the bad boy. Young women, please don't go for the bad boy. It seems exciting or whatever. It's bad. It's not gonna. Nothing good is going to come of that.
I don't know. You kind of are married to a bad boy.
Nothing good is going to come of that.
We'll get to my bad boy stories.
The nerds, they end up being the best.
How would you know? Husbands. You're not married to a nerd. Anywho, he dated his girlfriend, Ann Lockett, at the time of the murders, had also been abused by him and was a little bit scared of him, but apparently a little bit turned on, too. And then they had a friend named Eileen Bacala, which is just a name I enjoy saying, who was kind of a well-wisher again, not really a friend, but she did get a cut of the money, but only because they owed her money for pot or something like that.
She's... She got a cut of
the money's taken from the safe. But again,
Did she know it was from the safe?
Yeah, really. I mean, here's what happened. Prior to the robbery, James told Anne that he wanted to do something big, and she was going to hear about him in a way that would surprise her, that he was going to become famous. And Juan reportedly said he wanted to see what it was like to ice somebody. So these were...
They said this to their friends.
To these two girls.
To these girls.
These two women. And...
the girls were probably like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. I mean...
No, but I mean, you think they were probably like... Okay.
Yeah, we've all heard stupid things and said stupid things before. So they go... I mean, whatever. They're hanging out. They're talking about being famous, smoking pot, dropping acid, high school stuff. Mm-hmm. But something happens in the meantime. The robbery was well planned by James and Juan, and Juan provided the background information on the store, which kind of makes sense.
Right,
I mean,
because he worked there.
And again, without mentioning names, these are the burnouts, the druggies. Mm-hmm. The money that they want to get is probably going to be used for pot, LSD, and a couple $1,000s when you're 18, 19 years old. If you're into these low grade drugs, that's a fortune. I mean, $2,000 to a 19-year-old in 1993.
Right.
And again, Juan's the inside man. He knows where the safe is. He knows how to rob the store. No one in there recognizes him because it's a whole new staff because the previous owners had left and new owners had taken over. And so they plan it out. But here's where things get a little bit weird. This was not a robbery gone bad. And again, this was never intended to be a robbery. When they went to Brown's Chicken on January 8th, and they ordered chicken, and they sat there as it closed. But prior to going in there, they went to the back door, and there was an employee entrance and exit there. They took a wooden wedge, and put it under the door so it couldn't be opened from the inside. This is before they even walked in. I mean, so they basically blocked the exits, which right then is a bad idea.
Right.
They went in there and they ate. And there was a dispute between the two of them because James was mad at Juan because Juan was not wearing gloves and he was afraid that he would get his grease on his fingerprints and get his fingerprints somewhere else.
Yeah, well,
and he started wiping the table down.
Valid concern.
And they went in the bathroom, and they came out of the bathroom both wearing rubber gloves. And
there's your first red flag. If you're ever anywhere and you see someone who should not be wearing rubber gloves, seriously.
Yikes. They brought two weapons with them. A .38 revolver and a hunting knife, both which were procured by James, not by Juan. When they came out of the bathroom, and again, the only information we have about this is from their own confessions, which they both recanted and have varying degrees of responsibility for both parties. I mean, I
feel like every confession that's been recanted, let's say 99.9% of them, the confession is what happened.
Yeah. I mean, and really, there's some details here that you can't make up, and we have corroboration from two other people.
Why would you make up something so detailed?
No. So they come out of the bathroom, and you know what? This probably wasn't inspired by Pulp Fiction. This is before Pulp Fiction came out. This is January 1993.
Oh, I think it was. Whoa! It was around there. It was. Oh my god.
Well,
it was kind of around there.
But they come out with their gloves on. Fingerprints are wiped up, and they start. James points a gun at the staff and orders them to do something. There is some resistance, and the first shot is fired when someone hops over the counter. They get shot in the arm, based on forensic reports later. The staff is then herded into the coolers. They order them to go into the coolers, all 7 people.
Jesus.
March them in there alive at this point, with their hands up, and people there are thinking it's a robbery. One person does try and go out the exit, but it's jammed, and he's pushed into the cooler, and there was one defensive wound from a knife on someone's arm. But all 7 people go in the cooler.
So they're calmly going in. They're trying to cooperate for the most part.
Right. And the staff there that night, there's a lot of interesting stories, but the owners had 3 teenage daughters, all of whom were scheduled to work that night, but there's a big high school football game.
Oh, my God.
And so they everyone that was there, that was working there, was kind of there through a shift change. And the victims were Michael Castro, who was 16 years old, who worked there with his friend, Rico Solis, who was 17, both of whom were teenagers, and went to the same high school as the murderers.
Oh, my God.
But they were younger. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Then you had the 2 owners there, Lynn and Richard Ellenfeld, who had just bought the franchise in the last 2 years.
Oh, my God.
None of their daughters were there. But again, that was all because they wanted to be at the high school football game that night, and it was sheer happenstance because they normally worked on Fridays.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Then he had Guadalupe Melandano, 47, who was a cook. He was married with 3 sons.
You just totally Travolta'd that name. Guadalupe
Hey!
Maldonado. I mean, come on.
I just totally Travolta'd my Travolta impression, too.
Yeah, that was
Hey!
that supposed to be Travolta?
Yeah, looks like.
That was better.
I mean,
oh, my God.
Hey, Sandy D, I killed 7 people. Will you date me? Then you had Thomas Minis, 32. He had a twin brother named Jerry. He was single with no kids. And his brother, I believe, showed up at the scene, was initially a suspect in the crime.
Oh, my God. Right, because he didn't come home or something?
Yeah, and I think the police talked to him first. And again, we'll get into that, but there was so many false leads. And then you have Marcus Nelson, the 7th victim, who's 31. And he was a manager in training with a 4-year-old daughter.
Aww.
And all these people were working at a shitty chicken place in Chicago.
Oh my God.
Had their whole lives ahead of them. Nice people. I just really hadn't done anything wrong.
For some reason, the 2 guys who weren't remember in Clerks, she's like, I wasn't even supposed to be here today.
Right.
I mean, oh my God. And their parents must have just wanted to just, can you imagine?
Well,
oh my God.
The effect this had in Palatine, there was never anything like this that happened in Palatine or suburban
major.
Chicago. It's horrific. And having 7 people murdered like this doesn't happen that often ever.
No, I mean, you hear about a robbery gone bad, but that's usually not.
No, most robberies gone bad are just that. They don't execute everybody there. And these people were executed.
Most robbers who are trying to rob something would wait till most of the people were gone. They'd wait till the one manager's there closing up. They would not try to go in when there's still 7 people working in there. I mean, that just wouldn't be smart. It wouldn't even be a good idea unless you really wanted to just kill everybody.
And if that was their intention, they would have gone there with masks on.
Right, that's
true.
I
mean, like they made sure they're the last customers in there.
Yeah, they were careful enough to wear gloves, but didn't wear masks.
They cased the place out.
God.
I mean, and again, not to get ahead of myself, but at this point, if I'm being robbed by these 2 people, here are the red flags that are going up that I might not be safe. I mean, I guess you don't have the back doors jammed, but
they're not wearing masks. They're wearing rubber gloves. That's a bad combo right there.
Well, and here's where it gets worse. So they order them into the coolers, except for Lynn. And Juan takes Lynn to the safe. He knows where it is and orders her to open the safe. She opens the safe, and again, there was tears found on her, like she was clearly crying. Forensic evidence.
Heartbreaking.
But this is indisputable. After she opened the safe, Juan took the hunting knife that was handed to him by James, and he cut her throat from behind. And it went almost 3 inches deep at one point. It was 5 inches wide, and she started bleeding to death. But she wasn't dead yet. They then drag her, and they put her into the cooler with 4 other people.
Else? Oh, my God.
But her husband, yeah. But but
her husband was in there or no?
Her husband and Thomas Mendes were put into another cooler, just the 2 of them. And before Lynn had her throat cut, they clearly thought this was just going to be a robbery because on their bodies they had taken their cash and put it in their socks, and they had found credit cards of theirs put into the shelf because they just thought it was an armed robbery, and they were preparing, hiding their money and their cash. Right. They weren't fighting for their lives at that point.
Oh my God.
They were the first to die.
They were trying to be cooperative.
Yeah. And again, the timeline's a bit iffy here because we're working off 2 confessions, but prior to her throat being shut, James went to go check on them, he said, and Juan heard gunshots. Several gunshots, kind of like off camera.
He went to go check on the 2 guys?
Right.
Gotcha.
Who were in the cooler. He was like, and basically at that point, you have one gun, 2 robbers, and you've put everybody in 2 different locations.
Oh my God. So then these 4 guys in the other cooler and now have a woman in there who's bleeding out.
Oh, no, not yet.
They just hear gunshots.
They heard gunshots. God. And again, the way the acoustics were set up, it was hard to hear exactly what was going on because these are on other sides of the store. The 2 coolers were not. They weren't connected. So at this point, but they could definitely hear the gunshots. Then they come back after the gunshots, after they were murdered. And again, this was crowd control because they didn't want to be watching 2 coolers at once.
Why did they even separate them into 2 coolers?
Space. I mean, logistics. Nobody knows.
I'm trying to imagine the cooler in the one restaurant I worked in. I think, you probably could have jammed 7 people in there, but it probably would have been. But I feel like it's just unwieldy. I mean, obviously it was unwieldy to put them in 2 different
We'll put this on the website, but I have a map that I can show you there. But the coolers are actually, like, if they order people to go into the cooler, very easily people on one side could have gone to one cooler and on the other, natural confusion, that kind of thing. So they were kind of kitty-cornered to each other, the coolers. Okay, so those two, the first two in the cooler, the owner, husband, and Menes are shot by James, we think. After they're shot, Juan cuts her throat, and then she gets dragged into the cooler. Then
after he hears the shots, Juan cuts her throat?
Yeah, when James comes back. And, because I think they both... The consensus is they both went there with the idea that they were both going to kill people. And they had bullets upon bullets jammed into their pockets. Like, James brought a lot of extra ammo there for the gun.
Interesting that one brought a gun. I mean, I know he brought both of the weapons, but one had a gun, one had a knife. Because
And the gun was never recovered. So,
it's a lot harder to kill someone with a knife than with a gun.
I think, if I'm thinking like James, his idea here was he wanted to make sure... James didn't want to get caught. And he really... I mean, he made a few mistakes, but the crime scene itself, they never would have caught him if he hadn't told people about what happened there.
Yeah, there was his mistake.
So they come back, her throat's cut, she gets dragged into the cooler, and according to Juan, James then fired indiscriminately into the cooler as people screamed and yelled,
"Oh my God!"
to not shoot him, and all of the people in there, with the exception of Lynn, had defensive bullet wounds on their arms as if they were putting them up through that.
Oh, jeez.
James then went through the cooler, or Juan did. They both... And again, we're unsure as to who shot who, but we know that Juan cut their throat. We know that James definitely brought the gun and shot a few people. He went through and shot him in the heads. Every person had...
So he first just indiscriminately fired into the cooler.
Until they were lying down.
Until they all...
Fell down.
And then he went and headshotted all of them.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And one of them, while they were dying, threw up, and French fries came out of his mouth in the vomit. And that was a detail that allowed the police to verify the confession. That wasn't released to the general public.
Oh, my God.
But they ended up telling their friends about the French fries and the vomit.
Christ.
That
is horrific. That's like a detail that... This is like extra heartbreaking. You have too many details.
I'm sorry.
God, it's just so sad. It's just the worst when you think about what people are thinking in these moments before they're murdered. It's like, oh my God, just imagine and I think that most people probably are like, I think that your brain wants you to believe that this isn't going to happen. You know what I mean? I think this is why people are usually so cooperative and they don't fight when they're, kidnapped or whatever. Because I think it's hard for people to wrap their brains around the fact that someone's just going to come in and murder them for no reason, basically. So I think it's like their brain won't really accept it. You know what I mean? Up until the very last.
Yeah, I mean, I think the moral of the story is don't go in the cooler. Nothing good's going to happen in the cooler.
Right. I mean, they probably would have been killed either way because they were trying to fight him off. The guy had a gun.
But here's the thing. At one point, there was 4 people in the cooler.
What did the front of the restaurant look like? Was it all glass, doors, and windows? It's probably safety glass, though.
Yeah.
But were the doors and windows locked?
Well, I mean, if they weren't locked, they were blocked by a guy with a gun. I mean, these people were all behind the counter.
There was one guy with a gun, one guy with a knife, which I feel like is easier to disarm.
Well, again,
I mean, it's scary if someone has a giant hunting knife. You don't want to go towards him, but
it's a .38 revolver at this point, which means if he shot 4 people, they could have rushed him and stopped him. They could have taken.
You can't think in that kind of.
No, but I mean, at that point,
I feel like if I owned any kind of business at all, I would probably keep a gun behind the counter at this point.
Yeah, this podcast will end up with us being fully armed. We're already getting a dog.
We're just gonna have like a fortified castle that we live in. We just never leave it. We're gonna have 2 giant bodybuilders with automatic machine guns guarding it.
Our house will be like the bar in The Hateful Eight. There'll be guns taped under tables and knives everywhere. I'll poison the coffee just for good measure. We'll have the guest coffee and the poison coffee.
I'm already terrified of being... Every time I taste something that tastes a little bit funny, like those cookies today, I'm like, fuck, I hope this isn't poisoned. And then I'm like, here, try this. Does this taste funny to you? We're all going down.
Actually, the trick is, how do you entice the person that wants to kill you to eat the poisoned goods? I mean, they're probably hungry.
This is why The Hateful Eight sucked. That was just a god-awful... God, I hated that movie. It's terrible.
Like Tarantino beating his dick against the camera for 2.5 hours.
He's just... it was stupid.
It's bad. It's the George Lucas factor. It's like, if there's no one putting the reins on these people...
exactly. No one reined him in.
Yeah.
This is the problem.
Yeah, I mean, he...
and by the way, Pulp Fiction came out in 94.
Okay, so good. Pulp Fiction isn't to blame for this.
No, but I wonder if, you don't really hear about people robbing restaurants. Yikes.
You mean
Pulp Fiction? Maybe Quentin Tarantino was inspired.
Well, and the weird thing is, this actually inspired a few restaurant robberies that were non-fatal.
Oh, I'm sure.
And in another episode, I'm going to probably discuss, there was a serial killer going through the South at this point, whose MO was to murder everybody in restaurants. But again...
Really?
Yep.
Well, that was a red herring.
Well, there's a lot of red herrings here, too. I mean, shortly after...
I kind of want to hear about that guy now, though.
Well, and stay tuned for future episodes. So where were we? Everyone's dead in the cooler. They're vomiting French fries.
Oh, that's so sad.
But here's where it gets even creepier, and this is a pretty chilling killing. James takes it upon himself to clean the crime scene, and he mopped up the blood, he wiped down the counters, and he took every single shell. There was no shells. They had, I think at one time, 250 law enforcement officers working on the case.
Good
it was
God.
massive, and they have nothing. They have no leads. They have no weapons, and it wasn't as if they did a bad job on this. They, 9 years later, and 9 years later, it all came to a head. And at this point, what happened was Ann Lockett kept telling people about what happened. She told her mom, she told her sister, she told her boyfriend, and she told a friend. And eventually, her mom and her sister, who grew up in the area, didn't tell her to go to the...
Maybe they just knew this guy was a psycho, and they were just like, you know what? We want her to be safe. Because, you want to think we want justice, but if you think this guy has been threatening to kill her, and he absolutely knows that she knows, and, there's been all this, they might just be like, you know what? Just keep yourself safe. Just keep your distance.
Yeah, but...
God.
So she
Yikes.
The police talked to her...
Tip number 4,842. God.
Yep. And she gives the details to the police after a friend calls the police and says, this bitch knows something.
Good for her.
Yeah. And honestly, really, there's a lot of controversy.
Good for her.
We'll get into... There's
Friends, do not tell me about any murders you know about, because I will call the police.
Well,
seriously.
But this is like a big deal. This is 7 people murdered.
No, really.
2 high...
okay. When I was in high school, some of my classmates went on a robbery spree.
Color Tile Gang?
Well, yeah, let's not get too specific.
Color Tile Gang.
Let's not get... Hey, stop it. Stop. We're editing that out.
Okay.
Anyway. But they robbed, a whole bunch of places at gunpoint. And people knew they were doing that. And they eventually did get caught, but I don't think it was because anyone told police, but people knew they were doing it. But I really can't imagine if they'd crossed over into murdering everyone in a place that people would have kept quiet about that. First of all, I feel like it would have spread like wildfire, and that's kind of surprising. That, they told 7 different people, and those people told people, and those people told people. How did this not spread
the people they
to
told
the police faster than it did? That's crazy.
You have a boyfriend who became a husband. That's who Eileen told. Come on, Eileen. Told one person, and they got divorced years later. And I don't know how you. He was an outsider. I don't think he was part of the town. Maybe she just told him in past. Who knows? But yeah, he didn't go. How do you turn your wife in? And after 4 or 5 years, you feel like you're an accessory. Maybe, I don't know. So she basically said, when they got married, we're getting married. I've been harboring the secret for a while. Here's what I need to tell you. And she said, if I tell anyone, I can. This
was Eileen.
And I think, yeah.
Okay.
You picture people in high school that they're bigger than Jesus. They're these people that are infallible. You look at people in these iconoclast ways, and they looked at James Degorski as this mastermind criminal. And frankly, it was a fairly ingenious robbery. Here's what he did.
He shouldn't have told anybody about it.
He did nothing with his life. He ended up going to Indianapolis and was basically working as a janitor. And
so no more crimes after this. That's the other interesting thing.
No real record of crimes
It's
at all.
He just went on a murder spree and then he just moved on.
He
got it out of his system.
He had a huge... that's the thing.
That is weird. I think that's pretty unusual.
This is like the equivalent of masturbating before you go on a date for him, only in a homicidal sense.
That's pretty...
Well, it's he's he had this itch, he had to scratch
exactly. So, but when you're doing that, you're building up to something better, you hope.
Well,
right?
It's almost... God, I don't want to, like, relate to him too much here because I don't want to freak you out. But, like, here's the thing. It's like he just... People climb mountains to see if they can do it.
Right.
This guy... I mean, like, what's the great Russian novel? Why am I drawing a blank in that right now? Crime and Punishment.
Crime and Punishment.
But the guy basically theorizes that I want to see if I can get away with murder. This guy said, I want to feel what it's like to kill someone. He was in the drug. It was a thrill killing. It was a well-planned thrill killing by an emotionally disturbed guy who planned it out meticulously to not get caught.
It's amazing that he had an accomplice and neither of them got caught. I feel like when there's two people, I mean, every person you add into your crime, you are like exponentially raising the odds that you're going to get caught.
Oh, that's the real
thing.
And really,
that's pretty incredible that none of their friends...
Yeah. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, and everybody blamed the Mexican. Everybody thought Juan was the bad guy, the ringleader. Like, racism was everywhere. But anyways, so the police, they get the confession from Anne. You know, they give her some kind of deal, immunity, that sort of thing. If she tells what happens, she spills everything. She gives the names, and they find James Degorski first.
It must have been like wearing on her. I mean, I feel like if you knew that. Yeah. Wouldn't that be like mentally wearing you down, emotionally wearing you down, psychologically wearing you down?
Yeah, she wasn't a sociopath. I mean, she was an abused. She was abused. She's an abused person, and she did I mean, so. Yeah. Okay. But again, it wasn't her that told the police; it was her friend that told the police for her.
On that secret.
So maybe she's just like getting the attention and telling people that. Who knows? So James is working as a janitor in Indianapolis. The Chicago police or Palatine police contact the Indy police at this point, and they go out there. And they don't arrest him. They just show up. He had a work truck, and he would drive his truck to work, and he would take the work truck to go to these different job sites or various things. So they get his shift down. They wait for him to come back with the work truck to go to his car. They pull up in an unmarked car, and they come out and say, "Hey, you're James Degorski, right?" So yeah, like, we want to talk to you about an unsolved murder from 1993. Would you mind coming with us? And he just says, "Do you mind if I grab my tools first?" And he's probably just shitting himself right now. No sirens. They don't put him under arrest. And he gets in the car with them. No handcuffs in the back. And they say, "Hey, do you mind signing this travel form?" "Sure, consent to travel with us." And they drive him from Indianapolis to Palatine. Not under arrest. And they talk the whole way, 3.5 hours. They go to the police station. They talk to him at 4 in the morning. And, you know,
he hasn't been arrested.
Nope. And then eventually, when he starts getting to the details, they have the state's attorney come in, reading the Miranda rights about midnight, and then the state's attorney took him until 4 in the morning, gets a full confession. He talks about Juan slitting the guy's throat, and he says, "Well, I shot one guy, and Juan shot the rest," that sort of thing, and I feel terrible about it, and then guy just gets some sleep. But they didn't see it coming. And I think, again, the police work here is fucking outstanding, because what they didn't do is go in there guns blazing, arrest him, and give him time to think about it, because no lawyer in the world would let him talk. And really, he gave him the whole case. You know, and meanwhile, Juan at this point, married, 2 kids, working 6 days a week installing dishwashers. And
where?
Probably for Sears.
No.
I believe he was still in Illinois.
Okay.
He married a woman from Mexico, and she was heartbroken by this, that it couldn't be him, wouldn't be him.
Yeah,
he's
that's
gentle.
always like my fear, is that,
and again, she probably believes he's innocent, except that Juan gave a 43-minute confession with lots of details. I mean, horrible details, and both women verified details that they couldn't possibly have known. And much to the family's chagrin, the 2 women who had kept the secret but cooperated with the police got to split the reward money, which is about $100,000. And
that's fucked up.
Yep. They were convicted in 2007. Both of them were eligible for the death penalty in Illinois. And both juries in Illinois decided by 1 vote not to give them the death penalty. 11 out of 12 said death. In each one there was 1 holdout. And my favorite story about this is there's 2 favorite stories here. For James, during his sentencing phase, they brought in a psychologist to say how damaged he was and how horrible he was, how he was abused. Right. They didn't do Juan just played he's a father of 2 cars. His wife testified, "Please don't kill the father of my kids." He had no criminal record.
Jeez. No criminal record?
None.
Oh my God.
None at all. I mean, I think he was manipulated into this by James. Anyway, so James...
He had to have a dark streak.
James brings one of his employers in, and the employer's just like, "Yeah, he's a great guy. He would show up for work on time. He was really nice. I can't believe he would do this." And the prosecutor gets up there and says, "What kind of stuff did he do for you?" He's like, "Well, he would do maintenance. He would clean up." He's like, "He would clean up. Was he good with a mop?" you know, and the guy just kind of, he's like, I don't know.
Man.
But, so, James did not get sentenced to death, and he was in the paper recently because he just won a lawsuit against the Illinois penal system for $500,000. He'll be in prison for life. He got $500,000 because upon arrival in prison, he was beaten severely by, I believe, a guard, to the point that his eye was knocked out of his socket. He has metal plates in his head.
Wow.
And it was within an inch of his life.
Yikes.
And it was a beating that was richly deserved.
Yeah, seriously.
And
was it someone, like, I always, like, was it someone that knew someone who had died?
Really,
or were they just like, you piece of shit?
I believe it was a guard, actually.
But was the guard like, I mean, like,
yeah.
everyone, I would say, like, you know, most people in there did something pretty fucking bad. So why single him out?
Because the details of this crime are just so horrific.
Yeah.
And I had to dig deep. I pulled the appellate record.
It wasn't like some drug deal gone wrong.
It was a drug deal gone wrong. You fired your way out.
Right,
you don't.
Right. No. I mean, unlike, you know, a lot of people in prison for murder where it's some stupid, you know, crime of passion or something.
I think
Juan, this is pretty cold-blooded.
I feel like Juan deserves to go to prison for the rest of his life. I don't think he was the ringleader here.
I think they both deserve to go to prison.
I'm against death penalty, but like, I mean, this just like.
Here's the thing about the death penalty. I feel like the death penalty is not. It's not necessarily. It's a little bit letting people off the hook, although they hardly ever end up getting put to death, or at least not for a really long time. But, I totally lost my train of thought. What was I going to say?
It's a gas. I don't know.
Forget.
Transition. But okay. That being said, though.
Oh God.
We got a lot of. We'll put a lot of links on the Facebook for this. We're going to link to most of these articles. I probably garbled some of the facts here. I've been reading about this, but I didn't really outline it, so forgive me. But yeah, that being said, I turn now to Laura, my esteemed host and showrunner.
Oh, I know what I was going to say about the death penalty.
God damn it, Laura. What were you going to say?
There are some people out there who are so fucking scary and horrible that you just feel better knowing they're dead. That's all.
Yeah.
That was what I was trying to think of. Okay. Sorry.
Anyways, my question for you.
Yes.
How the fuck do you avoid this if you work there?
I don't know.
What would you do? What do you look for?
I mean, yeah. God. I mean, I think one thing that, I don't know if this would help you avoid it, but I think you really need to be real aware of your surroundings, like, all the time. I mean, you don't want to drive yourself crazy, but I mean, just the fact that, and I like to think that, like, mentally rehearsing all these horrific scenarios will help me if I'm ever in one, but the fact that you're being robbed at gunpoint and the guys are not covering their faces is a bad sign. So I feel like if that's happening and they're trying to force you into a cooler from which there is no escape
after they have their money and someone's throat is cut,
you know,
let's roll them.
Yes,
9/11.
That you read my mind. I was going to say you got to just you got to be like, you got to just rush them, and you might get shot and killed. You might, but at least you won't be. At least you'll have gone down fighting. I mean, at least try, because you might, if you rush them, that guy fired indiscriminately. If they'd rushed at him, perhaps they could have knocked it out of his hand, and then they could have overpowered him. I mean, God bless their hearts. That's a fucking nightmare. But I think people I think people tend to want to think the best of everyone, even if that person's pointing a gun at them, that they're not going to kill them. Most people would not kill someone, so most people have a hard time believing anyone would kill them, especially if it's someone they don't even know.
No, and this is unusual too for this to happen. And most people aren't there to kill you in these robberies. These people were. This is a nightmare scenario.
Yeah. Yikes.
Now, one of my cardinal rules of all situations, whenever I go anywhere. What is that noise?
It's really storming outside.
Oh my God, that's kind of cool. Okay. I always know my exits. That's a big survival rule.
Me too. And I never sit with my back to the door.
Yeah, but I mean,
that's like a mafia move.
What I'm saying,
sit with your back to the wall so you can see all the entrances and exits.
But in any office situation I'm in, any place I work, I always have I'm always envisioning someone coming in guns blazing. How would I get out of there? What would I do? Where would I go?
Hey, I work in a school, and tomorrow we're having a drill of basically an active shooter drill. We do that. It's so sad. We do this like twice a year. We have to they'll call over the intercom and be like, and there's two variations. One is an active shooter outside the building, and then you have to hide, which I think is kind of a shitty idea. and the other one is an actress. You're in the building, and you have to just find an escape. And it's not like the old, like, put your head under the desk kind of thing. It's like, get the kids and get out however you can, and then just run. They changed. I'm going to go a little bit on a tangent. They actually changed the training for this after Columbine. They used to train in the case of shooters in a school. Am I going too off topic?
I don't know. Yeah. Go. Yeah.
No, I'm just... Sorry. Never mind. No, I was going to say they used to train people to hide, basically. And then after that, they trained them because they were hiding. They had been trained to hide, and the kids were hiding in Columbine at the direction of the teachers. And then they were,
So basically, they're training you to, like, wait for the police show up to kill someone.
Right. So then they switched the training after that, and they do this training with us now, which is really... It's not even a training. It's just like, basically, know your exits, be aware of your surroundings, use any weapons you can, blockade the door, and get out. Get the fuck out.
Get the fuck out.
I mean, so that was where I was going with that is... I think that's the thing. You try to just get out at all costs. Just get out. Do not try to cower and hide, because I'm not saying these guys were cowering, but I was saying you got to stop expecting the best of people and start expecting the worst.
They thought they were going to be robbed. And they weren't. I mean, they were scared, but they weren't.
Business owners, you probably do get robbed.
They weren't fighting for their lives. They were hiding their credit cards and money and things like that.
Yeah.
They should have been making weapons. You put the A-team in the cooler, whole different scenario. They come out of the cooler, it would be a much more happy, friendly ending.
So, know your exits. Assume that people want to hurt you, and try to find a weapon. Like, what if they're probably use something?
I think we're dancing the thing here. Basically, if you work in fast food, you should be armed at all times. That's what I got this.
Well, you know what? There's a lot of weapons in a restaurant. A lot of would-be weapons.
Yeah,
there's
a lot of
knives,
sketchy people.
But there's knives. There's big, metal tubs and things. I mean, there's a lot of things they could have thrown stuff at him from the. I know that cooler wasn't empty. So I mean, yeah. So if I were forced into a cooler at gunpoint, I mean, I would probably just be so fucking scared I would freeze, but hopefully...
Don't pun intended.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Okay, so...
Fight your way out, people.
I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
You're your tangent about your school
so that was
drills.
An interesting fact that they have this official training, and it is basically no training at all besides just, like, get out of the building at all costs. Yeah, That's it.
Yeah, but I like how these guys, what if the guy puts a wedge in the door, then you're fucked, apparently.
Break a window. They will tell you, break a window. And then what they'll say is, if you can't get out, you look around. I mean, this is literally, we've had to practice this in a classroom. You have to find whatever you can that you can use as a weapon, and then just be poised, and when the shooter comes in, just attack them.
So here, though...
That is like, they're training school staff for that. It's nuts.
So
it's crazy times we live in.
I guess if you see two guys eating chicken... that are like 19 years
and
old by themselves.
And they're wearing rubber gloves.
Well, they came out of the bathroom in rubber gloves. At that point, it was
That's
on.
really weird.
But I'm just saying, like, I don't know, just two guys. If I was working there, I said, there's two guys eating chicken here by themselves. I mean, if you're like 19 and 20, who actually eats chicken at the
Yeah, a lot of people. We were always going to Denny's at like 2 in the morning.
Okay, how many times in your life have you eaten inside a KFC? Or a Popeye's chicken.
You're saying why did they? Oh, so I see. I've never been in a Brown's Chicken. Is it like KFC where you don't want to go in, or is it more of a restaurant? I mean, I feel like
it's like
KFC. You drive through pasta. What a weird place.
Chicago, baby. It's like Chinatown, only a lot more fattening. yeah, it's pizza.
You've
puffs.
got like the mixture of all the like carb centric ethnicities in Chicago. I mean, oh my God.
But we need to educate here. So again, to avoid this, you rush them. Today's Tom Sawyer. You know your exits, but here the exits were blocked. And you arm yourself. I mean, but really, this was difficult to avoid. I think the mistake that was made here, again, was that don't trust your captors. Don't trust your... And at some point here, I mean, when do you... The fact that they're not wearing masks, if they wanted to rob the place, wear a fucking mask.
Right.
Because there's no difference in how things go down at that point.
Right.
And again, whenever someone robs you and they're not wearing a mask, that's when you'll be super cautious.
Right.
When it's like in an alley or on a street, you throw your wallet on the ground, you get away. But if you're in a confined space, that's bad news bears, man. But anyways.
Have you ever been robbed?
Sort of. It's kind of a weird
Mugged.
story. Well, people disputed whether I was getting mugged or not. I thought I was getting mugged, but it turns out, maybe I was just asking for change. I freaked out and threw my jacket at it and ran away. It's like my first 2 weeks living in Chicago.
Oh my God. I think I was like, thanks, I guess.
It's like, hey buddy, like, and I just ran. It was a good fleece too.
I just wanted $1, but thanks for the fleece.
Yeah, I scooped like a girl and ran across Michigan
Come
Avenue.
on. You grew up in this town. You've been asked for change by 1,000 homeless people.
Chicago, baby, bad shit happens.
Oh, you were just like worried that it was a big city.
I've been chickened down by like military people before in different countries, but that's not really robbery.
Ooh, yeah, that's creepy.
But now we're at the part of the show where we discuss times that you should have been killed.
Okay.
I think it's your turn.
Okay, well, I'm trying to decide if I should tell, because I do have a story about Chicago. And
It's
we were
a
just talking about
long
Chicago.
story.
It is a long story. Okay, I'll tell my fast story. Oh yeah, we've almost been talking for an hour. Okay, I'll tell the story of when my ex-husband and I were driving across the country to California. And we were in a big pickup truck that my ex-husband had recently leased for this trip. We were moving across the country to live there, so it was a really bad financial move, one of many to come. But we're in this big, shiny new Ford something, all packed up with our stuff, just, all in the back, like a TV and all kinds of stuff packed into the back of this pickup truck.
In the desert with all your possessions.
So we're driving, So we're driving through, like, I don't even know, some desolate area at night, and we almost run out of gas, and we made it to the gas station, and I'm like, we're like arguing, I'm like, got it, and he's like, it's fine. We got gas that night. So the next day, the gas tank's getting low again, and I'm like, we got to get gas. And he's like, we're just going to drive a little farther. So we saw a sign for the gas station. He's like, we're going to wait for the next one. So we get to the next one, closed. By this time, we're in Utah, in the desert. Now, luckily, it was the middle of the day. But if you've ever been driven through the desert, it's creepy. It's creepily uninhabited. I mean, it was just like these, and it looks like Mars. I mean, it's just these big, like, rock formations and just like nothing, just like these on either side of the freeway, just nothing. And there was really not a lot of traffic on the road either. It was really, it was creepy. It was already kind of creepy. And we had no cell phone reception because we were in the middle of the goddamn desert. So we see this sign that says, gas station closed, a big thing closed. It was like 2 miles closed. And then it was like next station 30 miles. Well, there's just like no. So we're screwed because the last one was 30 miles back. The next one's 30 miles forward. We're just like, he's like, we're just going to run out of gas. We're going to run out of gas. I mean, it was such a bad feeling. Like, oh my God. And, I'm just thinking of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and all these things. I'm like, oh God. So we're just driving until we run out of gas.
Now, this is how you got pregnant, right?
Stop.
Okay.
No. So... So we're driving, we run out of gas, and it's just that bad feeling when you run out of gas, you're like, clunk, 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 dead.
It's weird, that hasn't happened to us ever.
No, that's never happened to us except for like 4 times in the last 2 months.
It happened twice.
Twice in the last 2 months. Okay, that was a scary story. That was the story of how we almost got killed by just traffic, not murdered.
See at Embassy Suites almost died. Yeah, but go on.
Anyway,
yeah.
So the car just dies, and he's like, okay, well, I'm just going to get out of the car and I'm just going to walk to the gas station. We were probably, I don't even know, 10 miles from, we probably wasn't 30 miles. We were probably 5 miles from the next gas station.
It's weird how these premises are either like for a horror movie or a porno. They can both start the same way.
It's a lot. That's true.
I mean, there is a combination thereof.
Exactly. And it just gets worse.
So
it just gets worse and more either horror movie or porno. In many to the trucker. I mean, this was how lonely of a road this was. Is that the truck driver was able to stop in the middle of the freeway?
Was he using his hands to describe your body to him?
And no, and my ex-husband standing there in the middle of the road talking to him. This is how alone we were. Okay, so he gets in the car. In the truck, in this giant truck with this truck driver, and I'm like, oh my God. And I know that the truck drivers are really like the angels of the highway, and most of them are good guys, but there's a lot of, you hear bad things about, shit happening. So
I saw a lot of weird truck stops. Not really angels.
I'm just saying, if you were a weirdo or a psychopathic killer, truck driver is a good career for you.
I used to be a truck driver.
Great. So, so he gets in the truck and they drive off. And as soon as they're out of sight, I'm like, shit, I didn't write down the license plate. I didn't look and see what was on the side of the truck. I don't know what company the truck was for. Like, I got no identifiable information at all from the truck. So now I'm in the middle of the desert. I have no way to contact anybody. I'm like smoking cigarettes and nervously sitting there, sweating in the hot sun, and he's just gone, and there's nobody else. Well, then a guy pulls up behind me in a car and stops. I'm like, oh God, please don't murder me. And this is really not that scary of a story, but just you can see how this could have gone wrong. It's more of a hilarious story.
Yeah.
So then this guy gets out of the car and walks up to the truck, and of course I'm like, my boyfriend's on his way back right now. We're fine, thank you. I'm like trying to act like I'm in a constant communication with somebody, and that sort of like.
Did you make a cell phone of a shoe? Like...
I had my cell phone, it just was dead. Just didn't have any reception. And the guy's like, okay, all right, you sure? I'm like, yep. So he gets back in his car and drives away.
Did you flash the international sign for "Don't Rape Me," which I believe is?
You know what? I was like not that scared of this guy for some reason. I should have been more scared of this guy, because if this guy had been like, if this had been Ted Bundy rolling up, he would have been like, opportunity, and I would have been dead. Because what could I have done? I could have locked myself in the truck, but the truck was dead.
It's pretty
My
safe,
phone
though.
was dead.
He doesn't know that though.
Anyway, so I'm like, I was more worried about the truck driver driving off with my boyfriend, and I was more afraid he was going to get murdered and I was going to just die in the desert. But then about 5 minutes later, I see, so this was like a freeway with like a big area in between, the median, but it was like a big sandy median, and it was kind of dipped down a little bit. It was like a little valley, and I see him.
I'm trying to get my steps in right now.
I see this. That's not disconcerting at all. So I see this cop car come driving towards the truck, and it crosses the median down through this little valley and comes up the other side and pulls up right next to the truck. And out of the cop car comes my ex-husband, who is then my boyfriend.
What shirt was he wearing?
And that's when I noticed that the cop car was not like a cop car, but it had a Dare logo on it.
Dare.
And my ex-husband was wearing a shirt that said "Hi Again," and it had a giant pot leaf, and it was supposed to look like the Heineken logo, but it said "Hi Again." It was a little play on words. And a gigantic pot leaf on it. And by P.S., our car was full of pot.
Yeah, your pairing with him makes you the first people to die in a horror movie too. Like
it was so. Yeah, I know. When I think about it now, I'm like, Jesus Christ. Yeah, we were really asking for it. But anyways, yeah, no. The cop had picked him up at the truck driver had not been a murderer. He had driven into the gas station. Then he realized that he didn't have his wallet, so he had to leave his watch for collateral at the gas station.
I'm racing Mike Brown.
David's pacing back and forth to get his steps in.
Mike Brown. So.
Oh my God. We're just going to edit all this out. So anyways, all's well that ends well. We've not died in the desert. But when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, that would be like an amazing beginning to a horror movie.
And that's a show, I think.
The end. Ta-da!
Right. So guys, join us next time on How to Avoid Murder.
And other awkward situations.
As always, I'm Dave Wilkinson, signing off.
And I'm Laura.
She has no last name, but she's a lot of class.
I'm like, Cher. I just go by Laura.
So summary, stay alive, don't go in the cooler, don't be a third wheel, and we'll see you next time. Stay safe. Thank you once again for listening to How to Avoid Murder and Other Awkward Situations. If you're listening to this, that means you haven't been murdered, and we've done our job. Make sure you check us out on Facebook at How to Avoid Murder, or online on the World Wide Web at avoidmurder.com. And until next time, stay safe.